My character in Incredibles 2 is named Winston Deavor, and he might come across to you as a bad person. He's a mogul, a media mogul, and he wants to work with the Incredibles and the superheroes to have them kind of come out from hiding, because he loves superheroes. He genuinely loves them. Of course, you can't really tell if he's just trying to make money off them or exploit them in some way. But then you have to watch the whole story to figure out what's really going on. But as we meet him, he's very gung-ho, and he's a real salesman in trying to convince the superheroes to come out from the shadows and do their jobs in society. When Elastigirl is invited to be the poster superhero for this new venture, well, it's kind of hurts Mr. Incredible's feelings, because he'd like to be the leader. But he is also, they're a team, right? Just like a good family is a team, a good couple is a team. And he takes over at home, and we get to see a dad trying to sort of find his way to, you know, being a good dad and juggling all the home duties. That can be very hard to juggle, but that a lot of dads do juggle in modern American society, including me. I was good at that, I think. The scenes with the dad and the baby are just the most outstanding scenes in the movie. They make you smile. They'll bring you back to life. Brad Bird directed this movie, and he is a massively talented person whose brain is big enough for 5 people. I don't know how he manages a story with this many components and that goes this many places and this funny and fun and human. I mean, he's done some great films, and this is just one more of them. He really orchestrates every aspect of your performance, and in a good way, in an enjoyable way. But I mean, he could really like give me a little turn, even on a word. And sometimes when we would record, we would split things up almost into every sentence to try to, you know, give it the spin or the feeling that he wants it to have. So he's really the mastermind of this, more than the screenslaver. He's the mastermind of Incredibles 2. Here's what you gotta look forward to in Incredibles 2. A really good time. Just lots of fun, sweet moments, comedy, surprise around every corner, a complex story that keeps growing and surprising you and bringing new elements into their world, and just a lot of great feeling.
The world that we're picking up from the last movie is a world wherein superheroes do exist, but they are illegal because of various things, one of which is when they have a battle, who pays for all the damage. And I guess you could presume some things got out of hand, and there were court cases, etc. And it's best for the government, less expensive, less problematic, if they just make superheroing illegal, and all of the superheroes that existed and are still alive and kicking are forced underground, like a witness relocation program. So they're forced to have normal lives on the outside, get jobs, hide their powers, and that's the world that the first movie existed in and that we're reigniting with this one. The audience knows from the first film that Jack, who we previously thought had no powers and was the only normal member of the family, actually has multiple powers. Now the audience knows that, but the Incredibles don't know that. The Parrs don't know that. So Bob, Helen, and Dash and Violet have no idea that their brother, a little brother, has more powers, an assortment of them. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife of powers than any other member of the family. And so this movie picks up, and this movie, they become aware of that fact. And they become aware of it at the worst time possible, when Helen is out doing hero work and Bob is in charge of the family. Incredibles 2 has two new characters that are major characters in this film, Winston, Deavor, and his sister Evelyn. And they inherit their father's sort of electronics company. And they, instead of just being people that collect the money, they actively run the company. And Winston is sort of the company guy, and Evelyn comes up with technical things, developments and breakthroughs that they can then commercially adapt. And so they've not just inherited the father's company, they've made the company far bigger and more successful. Probably the first idea I had about this movie was right on the heels of the original movie. And that was that I wondered how Bob would take it if his wife got the assignment rather than him. I think it is incomprehensible to him that that would ever be a logical choice. And it's not because he thinks poorly of his wife, it's because he so believes in his own abilities, and he thinks it's so apparent to everyone the way it is to him. One of the pleasures of doing this film was that, unlike the first film, I had not only gotten my dream guys, my dream cast, but I had also worked with them before. So I knew how much fun it was, and that they can go anywhere you need them to go. And it was wonderful to return to working with Craig and Holly and Sam and Sarah and all of the voices in this film. Giacchino was one of the big discoveries for me. He's such a versatile talent. He can do any sound under the sun, and so I've used him on every movie since because he brings a unique perspective to it, and I almost think about him like another character or another actor on the film, because he's interpreting the story, and he has a very good storytelling sense. So his music always has a storytelling aspect to it. And it doesn't mean that you echo whatever feeling is on the screen. Sometimes you go counter to what's on the screen. But it's a dance, and he is a very good dancer. He weaves himself through the many aspects of character and story, and I really look at him like I look at a lot of my collaborators as co-storytellers. And I love working with Michael.
What is she like? She's very brainy. She's great at, she's a techie, really good at solving and inventing things. And she carries a lot of the, I would say, momentum in the film. Her brother is Bob Odenkirk, who I love because he's crazy and super funny and very smart. They sent the drawings, which were, she's really cool and nerdy, and I just thought, yeah, it's a good part, and it's kind of a dream come true to be in an Incredibles movie. It's crazy, because it really is one of the best ones. When Elastigirl, she is now kind of coming out into the fore as the representative of this superhero family. And Daddy is home, and he doesn't really know how to do it very well, but what he knows how to do wonderfully is love his kids. But he's actually kind of running a day late and a dollar short with them, playing catch up with the kids. Brad Bird is the director of this movie, and I literally get, I get filled with some feeling when I talk about him, because I really am so fond of him. I've admired him for so long. I mean, he just kind of restructured or reinvent or whatever he did the wheel on animated movies, except they have the heart of the old school, the stuff that when you were a kid you couldn't wait to see again and again and again. And clearly that's the same thing that's happening now. But he brings the whole audience in. It's you know, he speaks a language that is not for any particular age range, any particular group, any one in particular. But the stories are so specific that they resonate on a level that's truly emotional and universal. It's thrilling. It's just a ride. It really is. And I mean, I think it's got all the stuff that you want in a movie that you expect in a Brad Bird film, but it kicks in some high gear sometimes, and it's really exciting and funny, hilarious. Some crazy stuff that I can't go into, scenes that I saw that are just, you know, they're just riding the edge on a roller coaster. And it's just like the characters you love and know. Now that you know them, you're sort of visiting them again. Like, what are you up to now? And it's just, I think the story's really, really good.
I play Bob Parr, Mr. Incredible, and he's, you know, he's a pretty typical guy. I'd say in many ways, he's quite naive and innocent, and then you have this other extreme, which he has this incredible strength and power. And so it's a kind of dichotomy that he has to kind of blend, or is blended. And now he finds himself the head of the family being just that. He's got to take care of the family while his wife is out saving the world. And I think he finds that at first really frustrating. And then probably in the course of the movie, it even gets more frustrating because he's having to learn how to be a father. Well, Jack's got, I don't know, a range of powers that are extraordinary. And Bob discovers them. There's this whole thing about the raccoon, and he's able to see and understand that Jack's an extraordinary little guy. But, and it's hard to deal with because he's a baby. He doesn't have any, there's no governor on his powers. Although he starts to control them a little bit, but that's, you know, Bob is able to kind of structure them a little bit. But then Violet has got this whole boy thing going on, and it's a whole relationship issue, and she doesn't, you know, she's got her own, coming into her own as a woman. And, you know, he doesn't really get that. And Dash has got troubles at school, and Bob has to kind of try to adapt and help him out, but finds that he's limited in his own, not only intelligence, but his understanding of the basic, like, math fundamentals and whatever. Bob's struggling with the need and the inability to teach his son, or to help his son, to help his daughter, to teach his daughter, to help his littlest one, to teach that little one something. And his inability to do that, but yet at the same time his desire to do it, are the things that drive most fathers insane in bringing up kids. And that's why, you know, when you get older, you say, gosh, if only I'd had him now, you know, because I know so much more. Holly Hunter is so much fun to play with because, I mean, she's very facile, and she's just, she gets, you know, she gets it. She's able to, when I'm playing off of her in terms of, you know, the dialogue and what we're doing, it's like I understand where she's coming from immediately. There's no There's no worry about, I fit right in. I'm able to fit in somehow. And that's, for me, that's the most important part. What do I, how am I? And she makes it easy. And that's why I think it works so well. Brad Bird. And he's wonderful, because Brad and I are the one, we work together in the studio for the most part. So that's who I'm working off of. So he plays all the parts. And he does voices, and he's also an illustrator, animator, artist, but he's so good. And John Walker, who's there, and it's a lot of fun, I gotta tell you. It's really hard work. I don't think people understand. You come out of a session, there may be 4 hours, and you're just exhausted because you're just doing this stuff over and over and over. And Brad makes it fun. Well, just a lot of fun. I think you're going to get a lot of laughs, and I think a family, they can bring their family. You can go to this film as a family, and you're going to be enriched, and hopefully you're going to laugh together. And it's something for everybody. It's going to cross a lot of different age ranges, for sure.
The Parr family is a seemingly normal-looking family who have put away their superhero powers, and there's a kind of conflict between the husband and wife, and the husband is really dying to get back into the superhero kind of profession, and his wife, played by me, is rather content to be with the family and be domestic and raising 3 children. And then, of course, as time goes on, they both are called to go back into that world, even though it is illegal. What gets presented to me in particular is the opportunity for me to explore being exclusively Elastigirl, whereas I've been Helen Parr, mother, wife, predominantly for years, only being called to save my husband, during Incredibles, the first one. So with this one, there is an offer, a contract, unsigned, for me to go off and be an autonomous superhero in my own right, as a business. It's an industry, and he wants me and only me, not my husband. The whole aspect of Incredibles 2, that there are a whole other sect of superheroes that we get to meet, and I think Brad's imagination really kind of goes off the charts with all of these other personas that are out there that are incredibly idiosyncratic. But we discovered that Elastigirl is an undeclared, unknown, really, mentor to another superhero whose name is Voyd. She's a new, young, kind of untried superhero who has her own gifts, who kind of hero worships Elastigirl, and that's an odd, slightly uncomfortable, very flattering fit for my character. Well, Jack is a revelation, and was at the end of the first Incredibles, which I thought was so ingenious of Brad to have Jack display his superpowers 20,000 feet up in the air, out of sight of his parents and his family. So no one but the audience knows what Jack can do, and even the audience doesn't quite know. So in this movie, we get to see like all of the ways, and even at the end of the movie, you feel like there still could be more, to come. He's a child of infinite ability, interdimensional abilities. I mean, yeah, it's really fun and so imaginative of Brad Bird and his cohorts at Pixar to explore what he could be and what he could do. Craig T. Nelson, who plays Mr. Incredible, has this natural sense of humor that effortlessly comes from him. And I think that Craig has a real humility that he imbues Mr. Incredible with. That's very, once again, you know, it's funny, but the word endearing does come up with some of these characters. I kind of feel that way about all of them, actually. Dash and Violet and Jack Jack. Jack even being, when he's a demon, there's something endearing about him. And there are surprises there are so many surprises about what Jack can do. But getting back to Craig, I love his humility, and it makes a lot of what Mr. Incredible does funny. I so love working with Brad Bird, who is the originator of the story, the creator, and really my collaborator in terms of bringing Elastigirl. I don't work with anyone else except for Brad. He is who we all do our recordings with, so he plays everybody else, you know, with us. So the partnership with Brad is really intimate, and really, I've so appreciated his sense of humor, and he's so playful. It's been nothing but fun to do Incredibles 2 with him.
The artistry and the quality of the filmmakers here in all the departments is just it's just amazing. I mean, they are so good. And the technology has improved so much that those two things together, it's like, whatever you want, buddy, you know, we can do it. You want a cast of thousands, we'll take care of that. You want great effects, we got it. You want all the muscles moving really smoothly, we got all that. Well, Craig is, you know, he's a very funny, very warm guy, and you know, you can't imagine anybody else being Mr. Incredible at this point, and to have him just walk back into the studio and we give him the new dialogue, and there he is again, right? There's this guy. He's alive again. He's been dormant for 14 years, and there he is. It's pretty fun, and you know, he brings this sort of sly sense of humor and to everything that he does, and it's a joy to watch him work, and the animators love the vocal tracks that he produces. In animation, you have this advantage that you don't. I mean, sequels in live action, the actors age. You know, you've got to move the story with the aging of those actors over 14, 15 years. You know, in animation, we don't have to do that. You know, we can start the film right where the last one left off, which is, I think that's really cool. It's like no time has passed. They're in the same parking lot. There's the Underminer, and they're the same people, and we're off to the races. He's just about the coolest guy in the world, and you know, and he's just such a commanding presence, and he walks into the room, and you're like, and he's so funny as Frozone, and he loves that. He loves Frozone's character. I mean, he's become a big fan of the film. I mean, when we first started, he was like, everybody was a little hesitant. They didn't know what it was. But once he saw it, he really became a big fan. And every time he'd see Brad, he'd go, "What? When we doing it, man? When we doing it?" And it was lovely to be able to have him come back. Michael Giacchino he's a great composer. He's had this fantastic career and will continue. And he's a chameleon. I mean, he seems to be able to do any kind of music in any kind of film. And we feel kind of proud because we gave him his first gig, right? His first score for a major motion picture was The Incredibles, and he's done pretty well since then, you know.
Well, the Parr family in many ways is like any other family, except for that superpowers part of their identities. What's interesting to me about them is they also are kind of iconic family members, Bob, the big strong father who he wants to be strong enough to take care of his family and solve all the problems. Helen is the mother who's stretched in lots of directions and trying to take care of everyone all at the same time. Violet is the quintessential adolescent. She wants to disappear and hide and keep people far away. And Dash is that super hyperactive 10-year-old. He's just wants to learn everything. He's still pushing boundaries, even though he's learned that, you know, he's starting to get those boundaries and has to obey them a little bit. And then Jack is the baby full of potential, not ready to take no for an answer. And that's something you see a lot in this film. Jack has discovered his powers while he has learned that there are some boundaries around what he can and cannot do. And Jack doesn't like those boundaries. Well, Incredibles 2 is different from The Incredibles because this time Helen is the one who's gotten the assignment outside of the home. And initially that's hard for her. She wants to be home with her kids. That's what she's been doing up to this point. But she gets the assignment that takes her out of the house, and she needs to take it because not only does she need to put food on the table, but she now is the one who has to make the world a better place, not only for everyone outside in the world, but for her kids. And it's a tough decision, but Bob is ready to take on that responsibility of watching the kids. Up to this point, he has discovered how much he loves his family, but he's never really been the one who has to stay at home with them and take on all that responsibility. So he, at first, is a little too self-assured that it's going to go okay. You know, he's Mr. Incredible, I got this. And what he discovers, as I think all parents discover, is that parenting is a lot harder than it looks from the outside. Sam Jackson he's cool. He's Frozone. Sam is someone who adapted to the world really well. Bob didn't adapt when supers were made illegal and had to go underground, but Frozone is an adaptable fellow. I imagine he's got some business that's been very successful. He and Honey have this lovely apartment, but he also still wants to be a super. He's got a lot of good to give, and he's a really good friend to Bob. He's the person that Bob goes to in his hour of need, and he's also kind of a good uncle. When Bob needs to leave the kids, Frozone's the person that he calls. And one of the things I love about this movie is, as hard as it is for Bob and Helen to raise their kids, they have people they can go to. They're not alone. Frozone is one of those, and E is the other one. You know, to raise children, you need help. You need, as they say, it takes a village, and E and Frozone are in that village with the Parr kids. On Incredibles, we were still inventing a lot of this technology. Simulation, hair and cloth simulation was a big leap for us on that film. But frankly, everything was hard. We hadn't animated humans in any real serious way at Pixar before Incredibles. And since then, I mean, this is our 20th film. We have learned a whole lot. The technology has caught up and the artistry has caught up. And not only has all that technology caught up, but our crews are amazing. These are people now who have either worked on this for 20 years or have come through school learning how to do this work. So I would say right now the characters look more like what we intended them to look like on the first movie. There's much more subtlety in the performance and the sculpting of those faces and the way their hair moves and their cloth moves, and that makes for more subtle and nuanced performances. I think you have everything to look forward to in this movie. I mean, after 14 years, it's bigger and better and funnier, and the action is incredible. The effects are incredible. Explosions, water, fire, it's all happening. And I'm just really excited for the world to see it because it's a magnificent undertaking.
Their life could be mundane, but they choose to be, you know, heroic and superheroes. And now all of a sudden, I guess we're in a situation where it seems like a lot of superhero movies took this path where so much has happened, or when they do their super things, there's so much residual damage that now everybody wants to go, well, is it worth it having these people that can do all those things, because they damage a lot of stuff that we got to rebuild. And I guess you could say they're good for the economy in that way, but then they're bad for, you know, people who have to continue to live in certain situations. So they find themselves in an interesting situation when we find them the next time. They're not allowed to be super. Lucius is easygoing, kind of hard to rattle. He's a good friend. He seems to enjoy the fact that his powers are what they are, and they enhance his cool factor. Winston Deavor, I said I met him somewhere. He gave me a card. They have a business and they're interested in finding a way to get supers back to legality. And of course, any super who likes being super would be interested in, you know, that proposition. So when Lucius meets him, they apparently know that he has this relationship with, you know, the other family. So it's kind of like, you know, hopefully you can bring them with you and we can talk about what's going on. And they come up with this plan to make supers palatable to the public again. The traditional thought of what a husband with 3 kids left to his own devices would be with the family, because the wife is outside the home now for a while doing something. She's off doing the breadwinning thing. And he thinks he knows what's been going on and he can do it, that he can get up and make breakfast and get kids off to school and do the laundry and change the baby and do all that stuff. You know, it sounds mundane and easy, but it's a much more difficult job than most guys would think. Brad is a wonderful kind of visionary, and I get the joy that he brings to what he's talking about, but I also appreciate the seriousness of what it all means in terms of where we fit in the animated sphere of what's come before and hopefully what will come after. Oh yeah, I'm excited that The Incredibles are back. I'm excited by the fact that, you know, we do know something that the family doesn't know. I mean, we know Jack has powers. They don't know. So it's great watching them discover it and figure it out, and how that, you know, changes the family dynamic and what that's going to be for the future of this particular franchise. I'm just glad it's back, and I know a lot of people are really happy that it's back also.
I play a character named Voyd. She is a young, kind of wannabe super, if you will, or I guess budding superhero. She's kind of coming out of the woodwork, trying to figure out if it's a safe world to let people know who she is and what her powers are. And she's Elastigirl's biggest fan. It was easy for me to kind of get in the mindset of fangirling her because I'm such a fan of the film. So I was like, okay, how I was screaming and yelling when the offer letter came through is how I have to imagine her reacting to Elastigirl. Voyd is, you know, she's a young girl. She's trying to figure out who she is and own who she is. And for all the supers, it's been really scary. They've had to hide. And I love the social theme of how tough it is on a human when they have to hide who they are. And in a way, to have a community that says, you were born this way and you're perfect and you should be allowed to be the best version of yourself, I think is such a universal story that anybody can understand. It's what we all want for our friends, our family, our children, you know, the world really. And when you get into the personal aspects of how that story plays out for our characters, for Voyd, she's nervous. You know, she's a powerful girl, but you see her first interaction with Elastigirl, and she can barely get it together because this is the one woman who she's had to look up to in her life, who's made her feel hopeful and who's made her feel like maybe her powers are a gift and not a curse. Well, I think that's what makes The Incredibles so relatable, and I think it's why people will love watching Incredibles 2. Yeah, our family is a group of people who have superpowers, but they're just a family. They have to figure out how to navigate kids and their sleeping schedules and homework, and in Incredibles 2, Violet is really stepping into her own as a teenager and likes boys and is sassing her parents a little bit and doesn't want their advice anymore. And, every parent in the world knows what that feels like. I watched it and was like, oh, I remember when I first told my dad I didn't need to hear it. It's universal stuff. And the entertainment comes from the superpowers. But the sort of theme that is really true for anybody who's ever been part of a family who's watching the movie, I think is why it feels so relatable to people. I just think that she makes Elastigirl so funny and smart, and she's strong, but she's also really tender and humorous, and she does feel very relatable, and it is really cool in this film, since Elastigirl is the one stepping into the spotlight and becoming the face of this super movement, to see how she balances that, to see these themes that I hear so many women talking about being working moms and feeling guilt over not being home, but then wanting to fulfill their own sort of purpose and passion, and also teach their kids that being driven is a good thing. And, again, these are universal themes in families, and hers just happens to come because she's a superhero trying to figure out how to campaign for the global safety of supers, and it's really neat to watch. Well, it's Brad Bird directing again and writing and creating, and really we have him to thank for the entire Incredibles universe. And I think it's his perception of social themes that make these stories so good. We talked about how in the first movie you're dealing with this sort of midlife moment in a family. And one of the things that I love about it is watching what every adult who watches the film takes away from it, and realizing that the kids watching the film take away a whole different thing, and they're happening in the same movie, and everyone has something to relate to depending on what stage of life they're in. Everybody gets to enjoy it. That's not an easy task to achieve, making something that has a really multifaceted story. And he's done it again.